Welcome back to the podcast, folks. And before we crack on with the episode with the Arctic Rider, first of all, a big shout out to this week's sponsors of the podcast. And they are Ultimate Add-ons. Ultimate Add-ons are the premium manufacturer of mobile phone and action camera mounting solutions for motorcycles. With a kit for any bike and a proven track record of creating products that keep your devices safe, secure and easily accessible, the Ultimate Add-ons product range is ideal for any rider, from the commuter to the round-the-world adventurer. Why shell out on an expensive GPS system when you could use your smartphone, keeping it charged and within reach to take photos of your travels at the same time? Ultimate Add-ons waterproof, shockproof and dustproof tough cases are available for all flagship smartphone models and are designed by riders for riders. Find out why Ride Magazine gives Ultimate Add-ons their coveted Best Buy certification. Keep riding this winter with Ultimate Add-ons. It's all about the journey. I've been using the Ultimate Add-on stuff way before they became a sponsor. I had the phone case. I've always used the, I think it's called the Helix strap mount. That's the one I've always used. I think it's in the pedal cycle, the bike section of their website. Go there. It straps around any bar at all. It means I can use it on almost any bike out there. There's generally always a way that I can mount my Ultimate Add-ons case and that mount somewhere on the bike, and then obviously I use that with Kalimoto as my sat nav. Perfect, job done. So if you head to ultimateaddons.com, use the code TeapotOne10, that's TEAPOTONE with the number 10, you'll get 10% off. Right, let's crack on with this week's podcast. The Arctic Rider, that's Gordon Stuart. Gordon is well known in sort of challenge ride circles. He's undertaken a number of different rides in aid of charity. He's a cracking guy with a great story. You'll enjoy this one. Let's crack on, folks.
I've been watching so many of these brew times, right? That I feel like I know you so much better. And I was like, we've only met once over fish and chips, you know?
You were pretty much, I suppose, the unofficial first ever brew time, weren't you? We had that chat in front of the fish and chip shop.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. You awesome. Learned all the things that I said wrong and then got
Are you all right to crack on, or do you want to have a quick chat before we get going?
No, I'm good to go, man. I've got obviously I'm not drinking because it's 11 o'clock in the morning, but I've got a can of Coke. So
same. I've got
very good.
Bit of branding. Yeah, I've got the old cup of coffee here on the go. So
let me just make sure my Arctic Rider logo is in. There we go.
That's it. Right, folks, welcome to Brewtime episode, I think this is 56 now. And we've got Gordon Stewart, better known as the Arctic Rider. How are you?
Hello. I'm all right, man. I'm all right. I've got a day off work, so I'm feeling pretty chilled. The kids are at school and nursery. This is the dream.
For anyone watching, normally I do these sort of Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings, and there's a little beer involved. This is Monday morning at 11 o'clock, hence cup of coffee and can of Coke on the go.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd be right turning up doing the school run after having a couple of Heinekens or something. It wouldn't really work out very well.
People may talk. I'm normally standing up as well, but I've just done my rowing spiel this morning, and I am in bits. I'm in tatters.
Good effort, though. Keeping on with it, though. It's trying to stay fit during all this madness is pretty difficult. I do a little bit of running, but it's super hard, right?
I had a tagline when I used to work in the public order units, and it was a real physical role. We used to get like 2 hours of phys every single day, and they like to run. And I was just known for saying running is bollocks because I just hated it. I was just never any good at running at all. So rowing, I can just about tolerate, but oh my God, it's hard. Just hanging. But anyway, enough about that. Shall we crack on? I think probably the best way to do it is I normally just throw the floor open to the guest. So what's your name? What you do? Where'd you come from?
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot, Bruce. And absolute pleasure to be on. I feel like I'm in really good company with some of the previous guests that you've got who seem far more esteemed in the motorcycle and adventure community than I. But
Mate, don't be daft.
So I'm Gordon Stewart, otherwise known as the Arctic Rider across social media platforms. Most of the time I spend being a dad, a husband, and I work in IT, which is all very boring. But to kind of counter that, in my spare time, I'm a charity motorbike adventurer, I guess I would call myself. So I've done 4 different rides over the last 10 years.
Legend.
Thank you. We've done, I think we've raised £13,000 so far. And I say because I'm not the one who's donating, it's all my very kind supporters. But now I'm on a kind of mission, COVID depending, that over the next however many years, I want to try and cross the Arctic Circle by motorbike in every country possible. And hopefully the plan is to get to £20,000 raised for the charities. So that's the kind of mission that I'm on now. And unlike some of the other kind of like yourself, Bruce, or some of the other adventurers, because of my kind of personal commitments, my rides tend not to be a year long around the world. I'm doing that kind of, let's try and do things over a couple of weeks or a couple of days to do something challenging, and then slot back into the usual routine of kind of making sandwiches and, doing the school run in the big tractor that I've got alongside the bike. So.
Mate, fair play to you. If you tilt your camera down a little bit, your logo's just out of. You want to let people see your logo. There we go. Beautiful.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, perfect. That's the one to look out for, folks. That's the logo you need to look out for on social media. Awesome. When did you start all this?
So it'll be 10 years on Friday since the wheels first rolled in 2011. Which was the first time I attempted to get to the Arctic. And why I say attempted is I crashed my bike in Sweden, which was very painful physically, but then also for my pride. But since then, I did. In 2014, I attempted Arctic Ride number 2, which is when I got to Arctic Norway and went all the way up to Nordkapp. 2016, I stayed a bit more local and I did the Land's End to John O'Groats in 18 hours. So I got Iron Butt certified for that one. And then in 2018, I did Arctic Iceland, which was, again, a different kind of challenge, lots of sea crossings. I felt like I was on a boat more than I was on an actual bike, because not only did I have to get to Iceland, but then if you want to cross the Arctic Circle in Iceland, you've got to get right to the top and then get another 3-hour boat to this little island. And there's only about 200 meters of land that actually crosses the Arctic Circle in Iceland.
Iceland's not in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, most of it's just to the south of the Arctic Circle. So you have to go to this little tiny island. Yeah. So I didn't until I was researching. I was like, oh, that seems even harder than I thought. That's not only just getting to Iceland. That's exactly. And I had planned. I should have been in Alaska in 2018, but anyone who followed any of my ventures realized I got caught up in some GDPR admin nonsense, which meant I couldn't get the bike insured to go over there. So I had flight booked. I had the Air Canada flight booked for the bike and everything, and it all had to get unwound because I couldn't get any insurance. And the challenge that I had is, because I think Nathan Millard had a similar problem. He was doing one of his kind of across America rides, and they found a company in Mexico who would do the insurance. But I was in a fortunate position that Suzuki had loaned me a bike, a V-Strom 1000 XT. So I couldn't just go on some dodgy Mexican insurance, which was because I think if I'd had my own bike, I would have just thought, well, stuff it. Let's just go and I'll have a go and see what happens. But
what was the issue then with the insurance? What you couldn't get any?
So I couldn't get any. So there's only a couple of companies that'll insure European riders over in the States, but because the British or the European Union brought in this new data protection legislation, basically the company couldn't meet the standards of that legislation, so they pulled their insurance offering. And it was only, I think it's been resolved now, but it was only for maybe 6 months. But it happened to be right in the middle of when I was planning to go. And I had this bike off Suzuki. So that's when I pivoted and I said, well, where else could I go to? And I looked at Iceland, and Suzuki were on board with Iceland, because obviously part of the deal with them giving me the bike was that I was doing something a bit different with it to kind of showcase its its merits and all that kind of thing. So that's why, Iceland kind of popped up earlier than expected.
Awesome.
So wow. And then I should have been. So I was going to say last year I should have been doing Arctic Russia, but obviously COVID got in the way of everyone's lives. So that's on the back burner until we're allowed to cross borders again.
Yeah, hopefully that's going to be opening up. I mean, I would like to say soon, but I don't think the likes of Russia will be open for a while yet. Possible. I don't know. Could be proved wrong, but don't know. Have you ever done Russia before?
So no, I've never been into Russia, and I'm very jealous. But again, I've spent a lot of my time researching. That's kind of like one of the big things I do. I try to be as clued up on these things. But actually, if you want to cross the Arctic Circle on a road in Russia, I've only found one, and it's between St. Petersburg and Murmansk, which is, it's really kind of almost in Europe, because everywhere else, obviously, you can go across like Siberia like you did, but to get anywhere north, it's all just like tundra and mountains, and there's some settlements the other side. But there's a guy, and I can't remember his name, on Instagram, who he's got a 400cc bike that he put on a boat, and he sails it down this river to get across all the tundra. And then he's been doing loads of stuff in this old coal mines and stuff that he's been going to. I'll have to get his name so you can put it on the bottom, because if you're on Instagram, like he spends his time in the Arctic Russia, but you can't cross the road, which is my whole point about like actually crossing into it on the bike, Yeah.
I take it you've heard of CEREBRA Extreme. Have you heard of them? No. My God. I cannot believe his name's totally slipped my mind. I do apologise if you're watching, listening, or anyone that knows him. He's a legend in the overland circles. I can't remember his name for the life of me. God. But his tag on social media is CEREBRA Extreme, and he does exactly what you just said. Most overlanders, like I did it as well, it's literally east to west, west to east, along that one road that just goes along the bottom of Russia. He goes north where you're intending to go, and it's no roads. It's all off road. It's it's long way around, but for real. It's the real proper off roading, no help. Let's just get on with it. It's amazing. What Walter Kobach? That's his name. Walter Kobach. There you go. That's his name. It's just popped into my head. I'll send you a link for it. CEREBRA Extreme. Awesome. But anyway, that is going to be a proper adventure. That is, mate. Wow. Northern Russia.
I'm really looking forward to that one. And then the final one, there's two other ones I'll have to do after that. One is to do Alaska and Canada, which is going up the ice roads. So the Dalton Highway and the Dempster Highway, which is going to be, I'm so looking forward when that one comes off. And then the final one is Greenland. But Greenland there's not very many roads in Greenland. No. And I'm actually, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to do it on a snowmobile. But I think that would also be like, that's about as close as I'm going to get. But that would be awesome to have to snowmobile across the Arctic Circle in Greenland would be something epic. And I think that's probably going to be the final one when I've managed to find the money to get myself to Greenland and get a snowmobile and all that sort of thing. But that's the dream anyway.
And I think, all that stuff is amazing. It's awesome. But I think it's amplified by the fact that, as you said, you're not one of these people like me and a lot of other folk who head off and spend a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or whatever, doing that big trip. You're like keeping it real, if you like, and you're balancing family life, work life, and you're still managing to do these incredible adventures. I think that's phenomenal. There's a lot of people out there they kind of feel like, I can't do it because I can't take a year out my life or 6 months out my life to do this big mega trip. And people like you that are showing, no, you can break it down. You can do it in, manageable chunks. It's just, you just find a way, don't you? You just have to find a way.
And I think that's I've listened to so many on Brew Time as well as other places, people talking about these big trips. And you do get that question, like, how do you I think the thing for me is having these little chunks as well keeps me so motivated, because when I did my 2014 trip, like for me, like I did 6,000 miles in like 4 weeks, right? And that seemed like a huge thing to me. But when it was over, I was like, what's now? Like, I've got to go back to my job in IT, which is, it's all right. Like, I've got my family stuff, which is great. But it's like, for me, it's the Gordon thing that I do. I needed that something else, which was going to keep me going. And now I know I've got, like, even when I finish the next one, I've got the one in front of that to think about as well. It kind of keeps me really sort of like focused. And, I look at so many things online and, I'm always looking at Google Maps and stuff. So excited about, can't wait till I'm actually there and doing it,
Yeah, that is those post-trip blues. I've been very open about it, and there's a lot of other people sort of have experienced exactly the same thing. It is like the curse of living the dream, isn't it? It's what now? What now? And like you said, having all these objectives and aims and targets to set your mind on, that's a great thing to have. Very jealous. Very jealous.
It's weird though, because I feel like I get a condensed version. I hear about these overlanders and people who go around the world, And these like, if you do like a 4 or 5 week trip, like you get this condensed version. Because I have this thing when I have that same thing, I get back and I feel like, oh, I've been focusing on this for so long. For a couple of years, I've been planning it. But it's also that fitting back into like, even fitting back into the family life. Like my wife will have been looking after the kids for 4 weeks. And then suddenly I turn back up and I'm like, I'm getting in the way, and I'm like, I'm doing the dishwasher wrong. And it's like a more condensed version, but there's still that getting back into when you go back to the office and people look at you like, whoa, you've got a bit of a beard, not as long as Bruce's, but all these different things. It's kind of like a condensed version. But I guess also it means I'm back into the flow probably quicker than someone who's away for a year or two, and they have, that gets kind of dragged out or whatever it might be. So
yeah, mega. You do all of these rides for charities, don't you? And I think is the principal one the Tiny Lives Trust.
Yeah, that's right. So there's 2 kind of big charities I've been doing it for. It started out with a charity called CEREBRA, who are a UK-based brain injury charity who I'm an ambassador for now. So my little brother, he was a near-miss cot death when he was 9 months old. So my mum found him in his cot and he wasn't breathing, got rushed to the hospital, and he because of that he kind of acquired a brain injury. So he's needed quite a lot of help when he was growing up, and CEREBRA helped him with specialist equipment. They helped my mum do disability living allowance forms and all the kind of they help with a lot of the admin that comes along with having like a disabled child. So the first Arctic ride that I did when I crashed, and then my 2014 was for CEREBRA. But then just after that, only 6 weeks after my ride, my daughter Isla was born, but she was born prematurely and she was really poorly. And she spent time on the neonatal intensive care unit in Newcastle, where I'm from. And it was a charity called Tiny Lives Trust who really helped. They not only do support for kind of parents who are going through that, but also for bereaved parents as well, because unfortunately there's a lot of little ones who don't make it. And they also fund, like they've got like a physiotherapist and a social worker and lots of other kind of positions on the unit to help families, as well as, the kind of stuff that happens for the doctors. So really, since I've become a dad, and then my little boy Hugo, he was born prematurely as well, and he had a lot of stuff going on. So the focus has kind of shifted from, my little brother's kind of older now, and we've done some really good stuff for CEREBRA. So now we're moving towards how do we help Tiny Lives, help some other kind of, families who've got little sick and poorly babies as well, which is a harrowing experience to kind of go through, especially as a parent.
I can only imagine, man. I can only imagine. Folks, I will put links to those charities in the show notes. So you listen to the podcast, look at the show notes. If you're going to be watching the vid, then check the vid description down below. Right, awesome. Well, I mean, there's so many questions I can be asking about all these different trips that you've done and the ones that you've got planned. But shall we just fire into the questions, because they always open up a can of worms and take us down various routes. And yeah, we'll go with that.
Let's go for it.
Awesome. Right. As usual, folks, we'll head to the clan over on Patreon first. So it's patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one, Clive Goodwin. Hello, both. Hello, Clive. Looking forward to seeing and hearing this podcast. Question for both of you. If you could own one bike and one bike only up to a maximum capacity of 500cc, what would it be and why?
Ooh. Wow. What a question.
Yeah.
So I've only ever had one bike under 500cc, and that was I had a 125 Suzuki Marauder, which was the one that I learned on and passed my test on, and then pretty much it went straight away when I could get a big bike. But I've ridden a couple of, I don't know about you, but I've ridden a couple of sort of trial bikes, like 250s, 400cc, and I think they're great in terms of the way they handle, and they're just not very, very heavy. But I think one bike I've been looking at, and I nearly bought actually when I bought I've got a 650 V-Strom at the moment. I nearly bought the Royal Enfield Himalayan.
Did you?
If you pronounce it. Yeah. Because they just look like the reviews they get as being like an overland bike, especially I've got a lot more plans to do off-roady stuff with some of the routes that I've got left. And I think that just...
Sorry.
I think that just looks like an awesome little bike to take off road. And it's like, if you've seen there's so many YouTubers who've got them and just say, I mean, and they're really basic by the looks of it. And I'm not very from like a Haynes manual point of view, I'm like a 2-spanner kind of a guy. That's about as far as I go. So I need a bike that's easy to kind of fix at the side of the road. So I think I'd love one of them. And I think they're just very unique. Like you don't see many kind of knocking about. So if I was going to choose one, that's where I think I'd go straight away. What about you?
Nathan Millward, he loves it, doesn't he? He loves the Himalayan. Genuinely, he's taken him everywhere. I've never ridden one. For me, do you know, it would be 125s because I never rode a 125 when I literally did my 125 for the CBT, so which is half a day, and then from then it was straight on to 500 cc's for your direct access, and then boom up onto the big bikes. But I've reviewed a couple of 125s and I've absolutely loved them, and I've stepped up to like 380, 400 cc bikes to review, thinking that they would be as fun as the 125s, but with more oomph. And I was a little bit disappointed. I had more fun on the 125. So I think for me, although I've never ridden it, but the Honda, the little Honda Cub, the little 125 Honda Cub, looks like it's a scooter. But Richie Vegas had one, Richie Vida had one, and Mr. Fish, he had one when we did the big little, or the little big adventure, big little adventure. I can't remember which way we called it, but they had them, and it just looked to scream. So I would go for that. I think the little Honda Cup.
There's something. I mean, they're just like an epic sort of like what a machine. I think is it the most widely sold, or it was the most widely sold bike at one point.
I think it's one of them. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's up there.
I've got a story. Actually, it's not my story. It's my dad's story. My dad's been riding bikes since he was 17. Needless to say, I've been officially riding bikes since I was 17. But he every year he used to go down to the Le Mans 24-hour race in France. Him and a bunch of his firefighter mates used to get on their bikes and go down. And I remember he told me the story. They were on the ferry one time, and there was 2 lads who were on Honda Cubs who would come from Oxford or something. And we got chatting to them, where you going? So we're going down to Le Mans rally. Like, oh, great, right, we'll see you there. Anyway, so my dad gets down there, everyone's having beers, there's this huge campsite, and suddenly about 1 a.m, there's all this kind of noise, beeping horns. So my dad and his mates go up to kind of like the open of the campsite. These guys have finally turned up about like 8 hours after everyone else, and everyone was like whooping them in, and they got like, and it just sounded like the best thing because they'd done that thing on these little bikes, like getting to the rally while everyone else is on their big like 600, 700 cc sports bikes or whatever it was at the time.
Absolutely. I just think they're a scream. I can't remember the last time I laughed as much as I did when we did the little 125cc adventure. It was just a scream. And I think if that was the only bike I could have, it would be a 125, probably the little Cub, I would think. Good question, Clive. Nice one.
Very good.
Next one, Ravenshead Rider. Great job, Gordon, raising funds for great causes. What's been your greatest achievement to date? Straight in there, deep, right in.
So I think the biggest achievement was getting to Nordkapp the second time that I attempted it, only because of the fact that I crashed my bike the first time. And it was, I ended up living that dream for kind of like nearly 4 years, because I planned the first one probably a little bit hastily. I had like a little 500cc parallel twin Kawasaki ER5, which I ended up crashing in Sweden. And then it was just the fact that I kind of had to limp home, restart things again, go put myself out there asking for kind of money for the charity. And I think there was a lot of doubt, like, was this guy actually going to do it? Because the first time he like crashed his bike and just came home. So I think when I finally made it to Nordkapp, which is kind of one of those, it seems like a bit of a Marmite place for people. Some people hate it because it's like a bit of a tourist trap and you have to pay your 50 krona or whatever it is to get in. But for me, it's kind of this like symbolic, like it's as far as you can go, like properly by road in Europe. And I just felt sort of this real kind of, I had such a weight on my shoulders. I'd done all the, I'd been on local radio talking about it. I'd been in the paper. So to actually finally get there and achieve what had been a dream of mine for 4 years, that is such, I think that's my kind of biggest moment, because that was the first real solo big trip I'd done as well. So to kind of achieve it on my own, when someone's like, oh, you need someone to go with you, or do you need someone to ride along the way with you? And I was like, no, I want to, this is about me doing this thing by myself. And that feeling of relief when I kind of actually made it there. Because I remember because you've been to Nordkapp, haven't you?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
that road as you go in, it kind of climbs up the sort of mountaintop, and it's really windy up the top, and I was getting blown all over
Goes
the road.
Goes on forever, doesn't it?
And I was thinking,
all the tunnels.
Exactly, but I was like, if I drop the bike here, like I'm dragging this thing, right? There's no way I'm not making it up there. So that was the big one, to finally kind of make it up there. And luckily I got a nice sort of bright day as well, so I could take the good photographs, and I paid some ridiculous amount of money to have like a burger and chips up there as well as a bit of a celebration after all the camping food. So it's really, that was the big one, I think. And everything's kind of like, just kind of spiraled on from there. So
yeah, I don't know about you, but I had no appreciation for how far it is to Nordkapp. You look on the map and you think, no, just top of Norway, just go up there. It's a long way. It takes forever, doesn't it? Like that last 80 miles felt like it took me a month. It was just like tunnel after tunnel, and then a stretch along the coast where you're getting blown into the sides of the mountains. And then, as you said, you start working your way up, zigzagging up, and it's like, where is this place? And then you get there, and it's that little kiosk to get to the car park. Yeah. And she wants like $9,000 to park for 3 minutes. You're like, what? I don't know about you, but I was like, oh, I've just ridden here from the UK. You're expecting them to go, I just pop. I'm like, I only want a picture. It's all I want. You're expecting them to go, just nip in. So like, yeah, no, it's like 30 quid, I think.
I had that though, because I stayed with a motorbike club in a place called Tromsø, which is one of the kind of big, well, it's not a city, it's like a town, they call it a city. And I said to the bike club I was there, I said, I'm going to ride to Alta, and I think the same day I'll go up to Nordkapp. And they were like, no, you won't. He's like, it's a full day to get to Alta. And I was like, oh, no, it'll be fine. So, I took their advice, because, it's like maybe 4 hours from Alta. And then it was like, okay, that's another 4 hours. That's a big day in itself. And like you say, on these windy little roads. But it did seem to take an age to get up there. Just never, the little twisty roads and the tunnel after tunnel just never seemed to end when I was trying to get there.
Tromsø is just, I didn't go into the city, but I sort of like bypassed it on the outskirts, if you like. I sort of curved around like that rather than going up to Tromsø. And I remember stopping in a lay-by to take a picture, and you could see Tromsø in the distance. And I was just like, it looked like something out of Lord of the Rings, with the fjords all round about you. I was just, this is stunning. Norway is just a beautiful country. Absolutely beautiful.
It's easily the most beautiful place I've been. And not only for the scenery, but like the people up there as well. Like just awesome. I mean, when I stayed in Tromsø, so this bike club up there got wind that I was doing this charity thing, and as all bikers are, they were very sort of like supportive and wanted to get on board. So they invited me to come up, and they said, oh, you can come to our clubhouse and have a beer and stuff. So I kind of get there, and they say, oh, where are you staying? And I was like, oh, there's a campsite. They're like, no, you'll come and stay with us. And I was like, no, it's fine. It's like, no, you're coming to stay with us. So this guy invites me into his house. His wife's there, his daughter, they've got like a newborn baby. And I was like, I feel like no. Sat down, full meal, whiskey in one hand, beer in the other. Like, they couldn't have been more hospitable. And it was just like, this is like so not only the scenery, but the people are just, that was my experience anyway. They're just the most lovely people on the planet. Absolutely. And so welcoming.
Yeah, and I found like the biking community there is as strong as I've seen anywhere in the world, but they just don't care what you ride. Like the biking clubs you go to, they've got scooters, they've got like Harleys, they've got GSs, sports, but everything is all intermingled, and there's no you're riding a GS or you're a Jigsaw lunatic. There was none of that. It was just everyone's out enjoying and getting on. I loved it. Great place.
No, I think the thing is as well, because they've got such a short window, especially in the north, their riding season isn't very long. Although I still, because I found the same, but they were still making fun of the guy who had the gold wing, which I think was just the best thing ever. This guy pulled out with his gold wing. They were just like, no, you're just still not quite in this club yet.
Mate, have you ridden the gold wing? Have you ridden one?
So no, I've ridden a 1500, but I've never ridden the 1800.
It will change your world. Honestly, I try to have an open mind about bikes, particularly now that I'm on the tractor, because I used to take the piss out of them constantly. But I still thought Goldwing, just No. You get one of them when you've given up on life, you know? You get one of them when it's near the end and you can't actually ride a proper bike anymore. And I took one for the test ride. Oh, well, I had one for the review. If I had the money, I'd buy one. It's phenomenal. I mean, it is... It's just fun. I found myself wanting to go to the garage to get on it and ride it. And I'm like, oh no, is this saying something about me or what is it? But everyone I know that's ridden one has had the same effect. They're like, it's just an addictive machine. It's amazing.
So my dad, so growing up, he had a 1200 Goldwing. And I used to go pillion on the back of that and it was so comfortable. But he, a couple of years after, he got the BMW 1200 LT, which was like BMW's version of a Goldwing. And I rode that a couple of times. And it was just, I couldn't believe how well it handled. Like, I had like a sports tour and I jumped on this thing and I was like, I'm throwing it around the bends. Yeah. And I was like, how is it? I didn't realize it handled. And yeah, I think everyone says a similar thing about the 1800 Wing is that it's just like, it handles so well for being such a monster, you know?
Yeah, it just feels like it's so big and heavy. It's nearly 400 kilograms, but all that weight feels like it's at your feet. So the thing's just stuck to the road. And the BMW K1600 is very similar, but I think I've had a lot of people ask, would I go for the K1600 or the Goldwing? And it would still be the Goldwing, hands down. The K1600 is a great bike, but the Goldwing just takes it to a different place. It's just a different level. God, I've got to find proper 30 grand to...
Well, that's the problem. It's more expensive than my car. It's like...
I know. I mean, it's £32,000 for a motorbike. No. And then people said, you can pick one up for about 18 grand secondhand. And I'm like, the GS is pretty much that. And it's brand new. And I just don't want to think about spending that amount of money. You know what I mean? It's nuts. Anyway. Next question, Pete English. Oh, let's see what he's got.
The legend.
For us. Absolutely. Hi, guys. Hope you're both fitting well. Question. They say the average person lives in 11 different homes in their lifetime. I'm at 10. What's your number and what's the one you wished you were still at, if not the current one? Ride safe, and it's a fantastic thing you're doing for those charities. Oh, he's not let us down there. So, houses. Wow.
I'm gonna have to count. Although you're older than me, Bruce, so you might have to count for longer unless you've been in one for a while.
I know. Yeah, all right. Bear with us a couple of minutes, folks. We're gonna have a little think. So,
okay.
Geez, I'm well past 11. I think I'm on 13.
I'm on 11. And it's topical, though. I feel like Pete's been stalking me. I'm in the middle of moving house to number 12 now. So,
all right.
Yeah. But I think probably the house my current house, only because this is the one that my kids have grown up in. And this is where all the kind of those, because I've had a couple of other houses, a couple of flats, and then obviously the ones that I kind of grew up in. But I think this is kind of like the memories we've got, kids being kind of brought back here. Most of the bike trips have been launching at this house. It's just quite a lot. It's going to be weird, actually, because I'm due to move out in November. So there's quite a lot of history. It's like when I start the next trip, I'm going to have to be going from a different garage and probably going to a different petrol station. Used to that routine of kind of filling up. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it would be, it'd be my current one, only for those kind of, those memories of the kids. You don't get to recreate them. So
yeah,
I was saying dad on everyone there.
For me, it would be the same. The house I'm in at the moment, definitely. This was the house my wife and I we got married, and this was the home. Yeah, it's sort of been I don't know what you call it. Is it the most pivotal point in my life? I don't know. It's just, this feels, for the first time, this feels like home. Do you know what I mean? Like, outside of growing up, this feels like my home and a proper base. Everywhere else was sort of quite transient, live here for a while and then move on to the next one and the next one. Yeah, good question.
I'm surprised it's so low in a way, but I don't know if that's just because, I moved around quite a bit when I was younger, all up here in the northeast of England, but moved to kind of different houses quite a bit. And then I've, been in student places and then different places with my wife. So it's kind of like we've kind of moved up as well. So maybe it's on the way up, or it's just my unstructured life.
Yeah, my student days, I moved about quite a bit during my student time and time in Glasgow and stuff. So yeah, that bumped it up quite considerably. But 11, yeah, you think 11, oh, that's a lot. But then when you actually start counting, you're like, oh, no, I'm way by that. Right, next one, Martin Rowe. Question for Gordon. How difficult was it to set up the bike for the challenge of the cold? And how do you condition yourself to the change in temperature? Good question.
Yeah, so I've kind of been learning over the years, and I've kind of learned through mistakes of getting very, very cold. So now the way I set up the bike is, well, it's all about the electronics these days. So heated grips are an absolute must. And my first couple of rides, I wasn't in a position where I could afford heated grips, which might not sound much. They're only kind of like 50 quid or something. But I think I only paid $2,000 for the bike that I took up to Norway. So it's kind of like, I'm a massive fan of the heated vests, because I'm quite a sort of slender chap as well. I don't have much kind of like my own insulation. So I find the heated vests are absolutely amazing to kind of keep you warm. And then it's all about the kind of layers on the bike. I've not invested in heated seats or anything yet, but I'm very much like, if I know I'm going to have a cold day, I'm kind of like, I've got thermals on, I've got a pair of jeans, t-shirt, hoodie, and then I'll have my heated vest and then my jacket and my kind of Gore-Tex trousers. But then also, if I know it's going to be, it's not going to be wet, I put on my I've got like a Hein Gerrick like all-in-one rain suit. Yeah. Because that really keeps the wind off. Because I find the cold, it's not the temperature per se, it's always the wind chill. So you can have a 10-degree day, but if you're riding at 60 mile an hour on some A roads, plus there's a 50 mile an hour wind blowing, it can feel like probably like -2, -3. So that's the kind of, I kind of, and always make sure I'm packing for all weathers, especially when heading north, because you can get some really nice days, but you can get some absolutely bitterly cold days. And I know actually, I spoke to the sidecar guys before they went to Russia, and they were kind of asking me, and I was like, guys, I've never ridden in -30. I'll tell you that. So, they're the ones who've got like that hardened steeliness. But I think sometimes as well, it's just about knowing, sometimes accepting, like I camp quite a lot. Started to, now again, I'm a bit older and a little bit more cash for these trips, is know if there's somewhere with a hotel or a B&B. Like I did that in Iceland. I had a terrible, my first day in Iceland was awful. It's the worst weather I've ever ridden in. It was like sideways rain. It was like 80 mile an hour winds. I was getting blown all over the road. It was only about 2 or 3 degrees outside. So it must have felt like about -5, -6. Yeah. And I did like about 6 or 7 hours in it, getting across Iceland. And then I found this little town and there was a bed and breakfast. And I was like, I'm getting a bed and breakfast. I'm getting a hot shower, because, trying to camp. I was thinking I'll just be a hardy bike and try and camp. But I was like, you'll end up making yourself ill. So if you can.
It's miserable as well.
Oh,
yeah. So, no, go on.
I was going to say nothing extra on the bike per se. Like I've either always ridden sports tourers or like or the V-Stroms now. So I've normally got a big screen in front of me anyway, blowing off a lot of the wind. So apart from the electronics, that's about all that I do, and kind of just layering it. I was just stupid, I would say, because I just went, if I get cold, I get cold. If I get wet, I get wet, and that's ridiculous. And I just sort of grinned and bared it, but it was miserable. Like you said, it was miserable. And now I've got, I went and invested in some Rucker kit, which is insanely expensive, but it's the best stuff I've ever worn. It's amazing. And now, like, it was -15 at one point when I was riding to Wales over the winter, and I was as snug as a bug in a rug, Rucker kit on with the old down undersuit, heated grips, heated gloves. I was like, oh, it's a bit warm. It's getting a bit cozy, this, which is ridiculous, because then you look at, when I did Canada, it was -38, and I'm in a bloody leather suit, freezing me nuts off. That would kill me now, but those times, I suppose you're just young and stupid, aren't you? You just deal with it. But as you said, it's not healthy. No. You mentioned about the heated vests. I've had a lot of people tell me about the heated vests. I've never tried them. I've only ever done the gloves.
What brand do you use?
So is it Keith or Kais? I can't remember how to pronounce it.
Kais.
Yeah.
Keith, yeah.
So I've got theirs, and it's, I can't believe I've been riding to the Arctic for so long, and I only got it last year, just at the start of lockdown. I was like, this is the best thing ever, and it's got like, I've got like the one, it's got like 3 different settings.
Nice.
When you can switch it, but it's kind of like, sometimes I just pop it on for 10 minutes and then off again, and it just sort of, because it's heating up your core as well. That's obviously where all the blood's circulating from. So I found it, and even actually just as an extra layer, sometimes it's nice enough. It's just comfy and it's cozy, and it plugs straight into the bike. So it's just, really easy to kind of fit. Again, like I said, I'm not really very handy with like doing many modifications, but it was so easy to kind of put on. I was like, and I think it was £100, but it's the best £100 I've ever spent from a, keeping me warm point of view. I'd highly recommend it. If you're thinking about staying a little bit warmer, and once you've installed it on the bike, like you plug it in when you sit in your seat, and that's it. And I know a couple of people said, "Oh, have you ever worried about you'll get off and kind of pull it?" But I've done that a couple of times, and the little thing just comes out, and there's no kind of damage to it anyway. So it's no great sort of like difficulty or hassle having it on there. It's definitely worth it for the heat that it gives you.
Gotcha. Do you know, we haven't even covered what bike you did your Arctic ride on, the first one to Nordkapp. What was it?
Oh, yeah. So it was a Suzuki GSX 650F. So it's kind of like the faired version of the Bandit, which is tuned slightly differently. And I don't know what I was thinking, because it wasn't particularly it wasn't particularly comfy. Like it was all right. And maybe it's because I was in my 20s at the time. And because it was like a sports tourer. But no, it was good. Like I said, I think I paid like $2,000 for it or something secondhand, and it was just kind of, I needed something. I attempted my first one on my Kawasaki ER5, which was totally the wrong bike. I mean, any bike's the right bike if you need it to be, but when you've done something and kind of hasn't gone well, I thought, right, I need something that's a little bit faster, can handle the weight. I can put some boxes on, because on the Kawasaki I just strapped everything to the kind of back seat, which I know is your kind of style, Bruce, when you did your around the world. But yeah, I kind of learned from that to get something that could handle some luggage a little bit better. Yeah. But it's a cool little bike to ride. I mean, it's only a 650, but it's had so much power in it. I never had any trouble keeping up with anything. Did a couple of 100 miles on the Autobahn, and it was absolutely fantastic there. It was really nimble going around the sort of like fjord roads in Norway. And it never missed a beat, actually, never let me down the whole time that I had it up there. And I did my iron butt on that one as well. And I really did, like, my arse was killing after that. It was, again, not the most wise choice for an iron butt ride, but cracking little bike. I think they stopped producing them a couple of years ago, and it's a shame, because I thought it was a perfect kind of like, if you're just coming straight out of either doing your direct access or your first kind of bigger bike, it's not something that you can, you're going to kill yourself on straight away, because the power isn't, explosive. But there was still equally, there's not many cars that are keeping up with that bike, and I think that's sort of like the real kind of nice balance about it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm a bit of a sucker for Suzukis. I don't really know why. Like I've had, my first bike was a Suzuki, my little 125, and I've had a Kawasaki, Yamaha Virago, and then back on Suzuki since. I think they just seem to be, touch wood, they're kind of bulletproof, really,
Yeah, definitely. Pardon me. The only thing when I was planning my trip, the only thing like mechanic mates said to me was the electronics, which is ridiculous, because it only had an ECU. That's all. Mine didn't have ABS or traction or anything like that. But they were like, no, the actual electrics, like the wiring loom, you might suffer with that in bad weather and all this. And I was fine. I never had a single issue on, as far as electrics go. It's just a bloody subframe kept snapping for me. That was it. So, have you still got that? Have you still got the 650?
No, I traded it. I traded it in for my V-Strom, which I bought.
For the V-Strom?
Yeah, because I got the V-Strom 650 XT now, which was the one I was going to take to Russia, because I needed something that could handle the off-road a little bit better, which obviously the sports tourer was never going to get anywhere near. But again, I'm not in a fortunate position where I could just hoard bikes, as much as I tried to convince my wife otherwise. I managed to get a decent trade in for it, so it went the journey. But I think if I ever win the lottery, I'll go on a hunt and try and find all the old machines and put them in a big garage somewhere, because I do miss it. Like the V-Strom's a really lovely bike, and it's a real sort of steady eddy and can do a bit of off-road. But when you've had like an inline 4, even on your 650, I miss that throttle, just kind of like where you just zip away, from.
Do you?
Yeah, I really miss it, which is kind of like, and the V-Strom, the V-Strom's got enough power in it and it can toodle along and it'll overtake stuff and keep up, but just something different about not having that, you're kind of always on the revs on the 650. I was always wanting to do more, and it was trying to take you along, which is quite it's that sort of like little kid in me wanting to keep going faster and faster.
I'm weird. So I used to love the inline 4 engine. I loved having it like second gear, maybe third, whacked it up at the 9,000-10,000 revs, engine screaming. That's where the power band is. I loved that. And then I don't know what happened, but I just sort of, I stopped enjoying it, and I preferred the low down grunt of your twins and your Vs, and I suppose the adventure bikes. I think maybe I just got old and lazy and wanted to be comfortable, and it had usable power.
That's it. It's the trade off, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. All right, next one, Grant Laidlaw. Couple of questions for Gordon. Do you think that raising meaningful amounts of money for charities is becoming more difficult due to the increased amount of fundraising that appears to be happening on various social media platforms? Also, what would your top 3 tips be to anyone planning a charity fundraising ride to help maximise the amount of money that they raise for their chosen charity? Good couple of questions, that, Grant. Yeah, so... well, what's your view on that then? Is it more difficult?
It's definitely getting more congested in terms of, even like when I started doing my stuff 10 years ago, I know there's like, and that's how we kind of met on social media, Bruce, through your sort of like fundraising stuff as well. But the kind of, even from a charity biker point of view, there wasn't many people out there, whereas that's sort of grown. But I think that's a good thing, but it certainly is more competitive. But I just think in general, there's a lot more, the charity sector has become kind of a lot more professional or commercialized. They've kind of really got their kind of act together, if that makes sense. So, you'll get people, like there'll be CEOs of charities and stuff now who are kind of driving forward for more fundraising. And, and depending on your, political persuasion, I think the fact that, there's certainly been less funding coming from central government. I think that's a fact. If you need me to fact check it, I'll find it out there. But I read something about, the amount of money charities actually get is decreasing from central places. So there's a need for them to rely on people to raise money more. So it's definitely more competitive to try and, have your thing out there as being what's going to kind of consume people's money. But it's also, I think, difficult because people are doing more and more kind of daring things now. Like, I think when I first started doing the idea of doing a big motorbike ride was quite like not a unique thing, but it wasn't many folk doing it. But you get so many people now who are doing bungee jumps and kind of like, floating next to the Eiffel Tower, or, going down into the water and swimming with sharks or whatever it might be. People are kind of coming up with all these different weird and wonderful things. But I think at the end of the day, the fact that, for the vast majority of people, they're doing it out of a really good place. And it's good if you're in a position where you can give money and you can afford to support them, because there's so many charities out there doing so many things. Like, I mean, I've worked with a lot of different, spoken to a lot of different charities, and there's so many people that need help with different things. It's kind of like, it's almost a good job they're out there, because without them, there'd be a lot of people who'd be in a lot worse state. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're totally right. Totally right. It is a lot more congested, but you can flip that on the other side and look at it from a different point of view. And that, how awesome is it that there are so many people out there who want to fundraise for loads of different charities? That's sort of, I suppose it's the glass half full sort of argument, isn't it? Is it half full, half empty? Well, yeah, there's a lot of people out there fundraising, but that's awesome. That's brilliant. Sure.
No, I think it is a really good thing. Is a kind of overall, but it's a kind of, I've had to try, and certainly as an individual, to keep my thing going, to try and come up with new different ways, and also find kind of new groups of people who maybe haven't heard about what I'm doing before. I saw a real transition. My first kind of ride or two was very much kind of like friends and family who were really wanting to support me. Whereas I've now kind of moved on to, like, I do a lot of stuff with like my work and things, and trying to harness that like professional network, because I sometimes feel bad saying, oh, like, mum and dad, can you keep just piling money into this thing? And as much as they, they will, but like certain friends, like, okay, I've probably given this guy 100 quid over the last 10 years. So why does he need kind of more? So it's, it's a difficult balance, but it is great. There's some, if I think about, there's, obviously, the Biting for Bernardo's guys, absolutely awesome. Yourself, Sidecar guys. The Iron Butt obviously do their Royal British Legion thing every year for the, there's so many like cool things going on from a biking point of view. It's actually kind of great to see. There's a nice like community sort of was really built up over the last couple of years of people doing some really good stuff.
Definitely. Next part of Grant's question now, what would your top 3 tips be to anyone planning a charity fundraising ride to help maximize the amount of money that they raise?
So I think the first thing is, if you can, to find a cause or charity that you're really passionate about. I think that's really helped me. And I know some people don't have, an immediate affinity. Like, I've got 2 very distinct things that have happened in my life which have attracted me to certain charities. But to have that, don't just go and decide you're going to do a ride for, raising money for blind dogs or something. If, that's not really kind of in your heart, I think you're going to struggle to keep yourself motivated. The second thing would be to really plan out and commit to kind of what you're doing. Because I think I've noticed there's a lot of people, and not really from a biking point of view, but people who do kind of marathons and stuff, they kind of come up with the original idea and think it's great. But then it's actually having that kind of set in stone about, okay, I've actually got to kind of go and do this now and really kind of commit to it.
Yes.
And I think part of that is certainly if you're doing a charity bike ride, is having that kind of, get the date in the diary, book the time off work, whatever it is that you need to do, because that'll kind of focus your mind and have that. If you have it as an open-ended thing, I think it becomes a lot more difficult to really kind of commit onto it. And one of the things I try and do really early is, first of all, I get approval off the wife, off the real boss, to say, I'm going to do this thing. And she is amazingly supportive. And she'll be like, okay, does this date kind of work with, stuff in the family calendar, whatever. Then get it booked off work. And then I'm kind of committed then. And then usually it's kind of like booking a ferry, booking a hotel, whatever it might be, to have that first, okay, that's in place now. So I've really got to go for it.
It's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the third thing would be, make sure you kind of commit to something which is a real balance between a challenge, so something that's going to push you, but also not something which is going to be almost kind of impossible to do.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple of people. There was a guy who I've been following on Twitter who was running from Land's End to John O'Groats. I mean, which is just insane. like a few people cycling it, which is equally challenging. But I think he overcommitted a bit and he ended up like rupturing his knee on day 4 because he was doing 50, 60 miles a day or something. And it's trying to get I loved his aspiration and I think he's going to finish it doing cycling. But it's like try and get that balance between, what's realistic and also kind of, but something that's not going to kill you. Because especially on a bike, right? This is the challenge we all face as kind of bikers, is that it's a dangerous road out there, and not necessarily for you as an individual, but all the lunatics around you. So if you're trying to do 1,000 miles in a day, or you're trying to get to Siberia in 2 weeks, you've got to contest with all the other nutters on the road who are trying to, how many times have we heard the kind of Smidsy phrase coming through? So I think that's the balance as well, the balance versus risk and reward,
Yeah, definitely. Things have got to be attainable and achievable, haven't they? And know your capabilities. I was going to say limits, but I don't think anyone really knows their limits until they've gone by what they think is their limit and either failed or gone, okay, I can do that. Let's go further. So yeah, know your capabilities and have targets that are attainable and achievable for you, not for what other people say, but for you yourself, for sure. Other things that I found, bearing in mind, I did my sort of planning and fundraising before the trip, sort of 2009 to 2012. So at that stage, I remember when I was trying to get corporate backing, I was initially, as everyone I think thinks initially, oh, I've got this is an amazing thing. Why would companies not want to help with this? Doesn't work that way, does it? You almost have to create a business plan, don't you, and go towards to them. So they were saying to me, we get 1,000 emails or letters a week from people saying we're doing this fundraising, blah blah blah, we're going to do this, that. What makes you different to anyone else? And that that was sort of like a pivot point for me, where I then had to flip my brain from this being my baby that I'm investing my heart and soul in to, okay, you now have to make this a business, and you've got to create some sort of attractive PR pack for a company. You know, if you're trying to get corporate sponsorship, you have to go to them, and as Gordon said, you've got to show that you're making some sort of solid commitment, whether that is financial, whether that is you've sold your house, you've left your job. You've got to show some sort of commitment to them that you're not just going to be a flash in the pan. You are actually going to do this. And I think for fundraising, that's probably quite important as well. You've got to impart that faith in potential donators to your fundraising package. You've got to show them that their money is actually going to go to this charity. And as you said, I think having some sort of connection to the charity you're fundraising for as well is crucial. You know, people have got to look at it and think, okay, I feel for this person. You know, I understand why they're fundraising for this charity, and I want to help. You know, there's a lot of little things that you have to get in place, don't you, to sort of try and just stand out from the plethora of other people out there that are fundraising.
And I think that's it, especially with kind of corporate stuff. So I've been lucky, you know, I've been doing last couple of rides. I've been doing some stuff with Suzuki, which I'm, you know, eternally sort of like grateful. They've been able to kind of support me and give me bikes, or, you know, give me free services and stuff like that. Yeah. And I've had a couple of other companies who've kind of supported, but I've found the kind of part of it, you know, it is, like you said, Bruce, it's that kind of where someone kind of resonates with you, either because they're a biker, or, you know, Absolutely. They might have a kid with this, or whatever it might be. And there's also just little bit of luck in there. Like, I mean, I had the Northeast Motorcycle Racing Club sponsor me when I went to Norway. And that was through a photographer who I'd met on Twitter, who knew those guys, you know, and he did some free photos. I mean, he said, "Oh, you should speak to the guys at the racing club. They'd like Absolutely. This." And it was that just luck of like, "Oh, okay." And there was a couple of like kind of steps went through. So it's that's also part of it as well. You just get lucky with either an individual or a company. And I've even had this with, you know, I got a £250 donation from this guy in Switzerland, right? And I met up with him, and I'm like, you know, kind of good mates with him now. But it was just like out of the blue. He'd seen what I was doing at the time. He had some spare cash, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I think what you're doing is really great." And I was like, "Oh my god!" At the time, that was like 10% of my like target. That is random. Yeah. So again, it's the luck, and, you know, having just those, you know, generous people who are out there that if they come across your thing and they kind of believe in what you're doing, you'll kind of, you know, you'll get some real traction from that as well.
100%. Just keep, you know, you've got to keep going, haven't you? You've just got to keep trying. I remember I sent out over 1,000 sort of packs to companies when I was trying to get some sort of corporate backing for my trip. And I think out of that, I know Vango replied and supplied my camping equipment. Krieger gave me the luggage, and that was purely, as you said, I cold called them. And the guy that picked up the phone happened to, I think he just lost his mum or a parent. Someone close in his family had just passed away from cancer. So when I gave him my story as to what I was doing, it struck a chord personally with them. And he was just like, "Well, you know, I've got to help. So what do you want? You know, here's the catalogue, pick your bags." And it is things like that, isn't it? It's exactly what you said. It's finding that person who has some sort of personal connection with what you're doing.
I know we're going over, we've probably said about 5 or 6 things now, but I think that point about as well, not giving up on your reasons for doing it. So it's kind of like sometimes, like I've been there, and you'll put a fundraising target up of £2,000, whatever it is, and you'll be only weeks away, and you've maybe got 50 quid, and it can feel like, oh, am I doing the kind of wrong thing? But it's always to kind of try and keep yourself motivated and keep going, because you are doing a good thing if you're deciding to do this, and eventually it kind of comes. You know, I've even had stuff like I've had, believe it or not, like negative, you know, people and, you know, some trolls and stuff who give me a hard time and say, "Oh, you're only doing it for yourself," or "You're taking all the money for yourself," which is like impossible in the world of Just Giving and Virgin Money Giving, where it all goes straight to the charity electronically. it's amazing, like, in terms of some of the negativity, or just keep going, because there'll always be people out there who say, you're not doing the right thing, or they could do it better or whatever. And it's just, you've got to just have your own kind of destination in mind from what you're trying to do, and keep positive.
100%. Yeah, nice one. Next one, Nick Walters. A question for both of you. What are your top 3 essential items for cold weather riding? Kind of touched on that, but feel free to go over again.
So first one, and because I camp, right, and maybe this is because I do cold weather riding and camping, but it's a really good sleeping bag. So I invested a couple of years ago, probably one of the most expensive bits of kit I took to Norway was a really good sleeping bag. Because even in the summer, even if you're going in kind of May, June time, the temperatures at night can get well below freezing. And if you're having a bad night's sleep, then your next day's riding is going to be pretty grim, Sleep's so important. So sleeping bag, such an important bit of kit. The second bit, and this is very modern of me, but my phone, right? It's kind of like, it's a map. It's it's for contact. You can use it for, the light that you've got on there if it's kind of dark, or, you've got a problem with your bike and you're trying to see in. I take a lot of photos of stuff as well. Like I had a slight oil leak on the V-Strom 1000 when I was going up to Iceland. So I took a photo to see how much oil had come out. You could see, and I wiped it down. I thought, right, next time I stop, I'm taking another photo, and I can compare the 2 photos. So I think, my phone is kind of, I don't really use sat navs or anything. I'm still kind of like, I like to look at the map and then kind of go on, but it's having that kind of map there. And also for an emergency situation, if you need to ring someone or you need to try and get a hold of someone, having your phone there is just such like an essential item. And then final thing for me, this again is going to sound weird, baby wipes. They are so helpful. So if obviously for when nature calls, they can be quite helpful. But stuff like in terms of keeping stuff clean, I found them really useful for kind of, I've got like a visor cat thing now, but before that, I used to use it to wipe the bugs off my helmet, off the screen. They're so versatile in terms of what they can do for keeping things clean, and because they you get 400 in a pack or whatever, and then you can just throw them away in the rubbish and they're kind of gone. So I'm a big fan of the multi-purpose baby wipes. What about you, Bruce?
Kind of similar to what you said, really. Phone, I've said it umpteen times before. Yeah, the phone is like, the phone and my passport are pretty much, if I have those 2 things, I can go anywhere, because as you said, phone does multitude of different things. I can also pay with Apple Pay. I can pay via my phone. Passport opens the world to you generally. So, yeah, they would be my 2 top things for normal travel. For cold weather riding, though, specifically cold weather, for me, it would be, I would say the padded lining jacket and trousers that comes with the rucker suit I've got. It's like a down padded jacket and a down padded bottoms. If you put them on underneath waterproof outers, so obviously I'm going to say rucker because I got the rucker, but properly waterproof outer suit. So you could, you can spend 40, 50 quid on a waterproof one-piece suit, can't you now, whatever it is. We'll put that over the top. So those 2 things will keep you absolutely nice, toasty, warm and dry. Heated grips. For me, like I can deal with the rest of me being cold as long as my hands are at least not painfully cold, but reasonably warm. Then heated grips and the padded jacket and a waterproof oversuit. I think that would do me for cold weather.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, my second 2 went specifically cold weather. One thing that I always look at, which isn't necessarily a kind of piece of kit, but is really important, is checking the weather. And I know that sounds really like nerdy, but like this is something I fell a cropper when I was in Iceland. I didn't appreciate what the weather could be like, and I sort of just turned up. Like, it looks a bit cloudy. It'll be all right. But knowing what wind chill does to you, knowing if there's a storm coming in, knowing what the nighttime temperatures are, all this sort of thing, knowing what's ahead of you, because you can have like a rate, especially when you're heading really far north. Even in June, July, you can have 30 degrees, or you can have -5, and it can be hailstones or it can be bright sunshine. So it's knowing what's ahead of you, I think, is really important. I know it's not a piece of kit, but it's more just like an approach that I always take now. I'm like, understand what weather's coming your way for either the day or the days ahead of you. You know, I think it's really important to brace for the cold.
Definitely. And as you said with your phone, I remember I used to do this at night when I'm lying in my tent in the arsehole of nowhere, is I would use my phone to like use the street view or the satellite view on my phone to zoom in on Google Maps and get an idea as to where, you know, what it's like where I'm going next. Is it tarmac? Is it track? Is it nothing? What is there? You know, as you said, it's just forward research, isn't it? It's preparing yourself sort of mentally for, oh, this is going to be a tough day, or, oh, okay, right, this should be all right for the next however many miles. Yeah. So yeah, prepare your mind and prepare your body. That's probably the best bit of advice there, isn't it? Next one, Will Carroll. Hi to both of you. How you doing, Will? As someone who works for a charity, I have the greatest respect to those who give up their time and effort to raise the money to enable the work to continue. Without people like Gordon, many would suffer. My question to both is, if heaven exists and you get in, what question would you ask God? Oh, wow. Blimey.
That's really deep for a midday on a Monday.
I mean, need more than coffee for that. Wow.
Have you got an answer, Bruce, or do you want me to try and go first?
If you've got any idea of one, please feel free.
Well, I think it's obviously it's a very deep question, right? And I try not to. My mind's not intelligent enough to work through all of this. But I think it's one of those really difficult things, because if there is something which is the stereotypical kind of view of God all being all powerful, one of the things you're asking him was, what the fuck's all this about? All the people died in Africa from AIDS, and like, you know, kids being, you know, that would be part of like what sort of test? Were you trying to make me more robust, or are you trying to keep these people on their toes? Like, and I think that's, you know, depending how you fall from a kind of religious point of view, I still think that would be, and you'd hope that if there is some higher power, that they'd be open to some of that challenge and explain what's going on, because there is, you know, I feel so incredibly lucky to, first of all, have been born in the UK. Like, you've won the lottery of life almost by being born here anyway. I've had, you know, parents who gave me a safe, you know, family life and all this sort of thing. But there's so many other places in the world. I was lucky enough, I went to South Africa a couple of years ago with this thing from my work. It's called there's this group called One Young World, and they get a bunch of, every year they do like a conference somewhere. It's like a youth leadership conference. And my work kind of sent me, and they've got people from companies and charities and non-government organizations. And I met people from Turkmenistan, from Mexico, from sub-Saharan Africa, everywhere. And it's like, if you see and understand like the suffering that's going on in the world, it's so like, you know, I feel so, again, so incredibly lucky to be where I'm from and the kind of freedoms that we've got here. Even this guy I met from Mexico, he was talking about how, for like religious reasons, they're not very big on blood donation. And he set up this kind of like a mobile blood bank to get people to donate blood to take back to the hospitals, because they'll have people going for operations and they don't have enough blood to give them to kind of keep them kind of alive. Wow. And it's kind of like, so, you know, I've through secondhand, you know, seen kind of all the suffering. I got to go to Soweto and like, you know, meet some of the people in the townships, and it's just like harrowing. So if you think if there is anyone who's got any control over this, it's asleep at the wheel, I think, a little bit. But we'll leave it there, because I don't want to upset anyone with their own views. But like, that's my kind of view, is like, what's going on, man?
Like my views and all this have changed. I'm not a religious man. But I certainly feel that the older I get, the more sort of questioning I become, and almost spiritual, I think I'm becoming. Like, what is the point? What's the reasons? You know, how did this all happen? And I don't think there is an all-seeing, all-knowing being, but it could be wrong. Who knows? But what comes into my head is, well, where did you come from? How did you get here then? That's what comes into my head. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, if you did all this, how did you come about? How did that happen? That's what pops into my head. But anyway, Will, thank you very much for the question. As I said, I need more than coffee for that. Next one, Philippe Martin. Gordon, congratulations for your massive achievements and thank you for what you do for the charities you support. I have myself experienced fundraising to support causes that are very close to my heart too, and the feeling is undescribable. Questions. Have you ever regretted making such long trips away from home when you think on your family being left behind for some time? And have you considered taking your family with you for one of these trips, not necessarily on a bike? Thanks to both.
Great. Well, that's first of all, thank you for the kind words. That's really lovely. In terms of, so I don't go away for very long, right? So, people who go away for 6 months, a year, that's like a huge thing. But I still think even for me, especially having 2 young kids, like the pressure that I put on my wife is quite a lot. We've got like, both my kids have got health stuff going on as well. So it is a big deal for me to just ship off for kind of 3 and 4 weeks. So there is a level of kind of like guilt. It kind of leaving my wife to kind of deal with everything. Although, she's got a good support network of friends and things. But it is kind of like the trade-off is that's kind of like, this is kind of the thing that I've sort of managed to carve out about a way that I can do something different, be a bit unique. I'm not just going to run a marathon or, climb, go and hike up mountains or whatever, like some people do, which is great. So I think there's kind of a mutual understanding between my wife and I that this is kind of like the right thing to do. But of course, especially as my kids are getting older, every time I go away, I do miss them. I struggled quite a lot with that in Iceland, actually, because I had both my kids then, and my son Hugo, he'd been in hospital only a couple of months before, so it was difficult to kind of go away. But there's also part of that kind of like there's that whole absence makes the heart grow fonder thing, and I think that's not only from like with your kind of wife or partner or whatever, but also with your kids. Like it was such the look on their faces when I kind of pulled back up the road on the bike was just like amazing, and it was so like that feeling. It's lovely to pick them up every day from nursery and school, but that feeling when you've been away for 4 weeks and you see their little faces and they're so excited to see you. I think it's kind of like a difficult balance, but it's definitely getting harder. I don't know how you found that, Bruce, especially being away from your wife for such a long time, right?
Yeah, I think I was in a slightly different position in that when I made my mind up that I was going to do this trip, I hadn't met my wife yet.
Oh, right. Okay.
So Nikki and I met once I pulled the pin and I was going, right, I'm doing in 3 years' time, I'm setting off, I'm going to do this trip. So, that was an interesting first date. But, my wife took the mindset of, okay, well, we'll deal with things as they come. And if we're still together when you go, then we'll deal with it and we'll see what happens. And, I'll not get into the ins and outs, but, we tried a few different things on the build up to me going and then decided, no, we're going to stick together and we'll see how this goes. And it, as you said, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And certainly by the end of the trip, I was like, right, it's definitely the woman for me. This is definitely happening and let's go. And with my son, I was in a different position because, his mum and I split up before he was even 1 year old. So I'd spent a large part of his sort of formative years there where I wasn't part of his day-to-day life. I used to get him 4 days out of 7 when I lived in Glasgow. And then when I moved to London, that dropped drastically to like once a month, once every couple of months. And then it was school holidays. So, I was sort of used to not having him part of my day-to-day life, and he was used to not me being part of his day-to-day life. But again, I kind of found like I was, in my head, I was doing that trip for him to try and show him that you can achieve stuff, like just set your goals and reach for the stars and set your mind on something and go for it. And I kind of hope, I still don't know if he's ever watched the whole series. I've got no idea, but I hope he does, and I hope it does have. I'm sure it has, because he's now in himself. He's into cycling, so he's now set himself little challenges where he cycled from Glasgow down to southern France, and now he wants to cycle the length of the Rhine, and so he's definitely got that sort of drive that I had and or have. And I hope I'm a little bit of a role model for him. I don't know if I am or not. Who knows? But would you ever think about taking your family with you on a trip?
So I think we've done. We're not big kind of beach holiday lovers. So we've tried a few little. Me and my wife love to travel, and we've tried a few kind of city breaks with the kids, and it's a bit different. You kind of find ways to you have to find soft plays and play parks and stuff. Museums that have got kids stuff as well. My wife came in. She met me in Oslo on my first trip after I'd crashed, and that was nice. I think we've spoken about, especially when I go to do Alaska and Canada, about them maybe flying out at the end and meeting me somewhere, because I'm good. That's going to be I'll be away for kind of like 6 weeks or something to do that one. And that's quite a substantial amount. So if they could kind of, obviously in a post-COVID world where we can actually travel and not quarantine, kind of meet them somewhere so we can have a bit of a kind of family holiday as well.
Yeah.
But there's part of me as well. I was thinking about this the other week when I was out on the bike. I'd love when my kids grow up, I'd love to go and take them back to Nordkapp. And I don't know if they'll be into biking or whether they want, or they maybe do it as just a road trip or something, but go and see, because I've seen so many, especially in Norway, like we said, I've seen so many beautiful places, but I've seen them only by myself. And, they were, kind of like my little brother was with me on that trip in kind of spirit and things, but I'd love to just go and take them back and show them, like, this is Tromsø, or this is the Lofoten Isles, or, because I talk about it quite a lot. But for them to come in, I think it would be a really lovely experience to go and do something kind of together and kind of reminisce about, some of the big stuff that I've done. But who knows whether they'll be into bikes or want to kind of do that. But I'm hoping there might be something there that we can go and do. Probably not camping. I can't imagine like my wife would want to come and do the camping, but maybe we'll do hotels or something,
My boys spoke about us doing something, because he's a videographer for a living, it's what he does now. And he spoke about maybe doing his bike test, and then him and I just hitting the road and doing a road trip, even if it's around Scotland, and the pair of us film it and do something out of it. So that's quite cool to think that he's thinking along those lines, because I'd love to do something like that with him. We used to tour. I used to have him on the back of the Jigsaw, and we did like a 2-week road trip around Scotland, and we did 2 or 3 weeks around Europe, camping and stuff, all on the Jigsaw. And he loved that, but obviously he's too big for that now. But it would be nice to do it with him on his own bike, for sure. Right, that is us finished with the Patreon questions. We're going to move across to Instagram. Are you okay for time?
Yeah, all good.
Awesome. Shall we have a natural break? Because my back teeth are floating. Have a quick pee.
If you need to, that's fine. I'll go and get refreshments as well. So I'll be back in a second.
Awesome. See you in 5. Hope you're enjoying this one, folks. I told you Gordon was a cracking lad. Right, another big shout out to the rest of our sponsors, who are the Influencer Store. The Influencer Store helps you build your brand, big or small, providing you with a solution and apparel. We help you to increase your fan base while supporting you with starting your own influencer clothing line with nothing more than just an idea or design, and there are no hidden costs. For more info, come and check us out at theinfluencerstore.co.uk or drop us an email at online@influencerstore.co.uk for more information. Now, the Influencer Store handle all my merch for TeapotOne, so if you head to my website, TeapotOne.com, head to the shop, everything there is handled by the Influencer Store. Make sure you check them out and tell them you came from Brewtime. Lastly, a massive shout out to Innov. Now, Innov sponsored the main TeapotOne YouTube channel as well as the podcast. They are synonymous with motorcycle dash cams. They're pretty much the industry leaders now. They do everything from the single C5 system right through to the modern 4K dual camera K series. The K5 is their flagship 4K model. They've got the K2 and the K3. The K3 has the remote and external mic, which the K5 has, but it's only a 1080 resolution system. For me, it's got to be the K5 all day long, but head to innov.co.uk, that's innov.co.uk/TP1, and check out their product range there to see which one best fits you. If you've got any questions at all, either drop Innov a line or drop me a line, info@TeapotOne, or through any of my social media, and I'll do my best to answer. If you ever get involved in any kind of accident, folks, the first thing they'll ask is there any CCTV? And if you've got one of these systems fitted to your bike, then you can answer Yes. So head to inov.co.uk. A huge thank you to all of the podcast sponsors. You really are helping to make this happen, and all of you over on Patreon who also help to support the podcast. If you're interested in sponsoring an episode or the podcast in general, then drop us a line, info@teapotone.com, and I'll be very happy to take it from there. Okay, let's crack back on with this week's episode. Right, folks, we shall now move across to Instagram. So that's Instagram at TeapotOne Insta, and I'll put Gordon's links down below as well. First question, Nick Knuckingsford. Question, how do you stop your spectacles steaming up? That's a popular one.
So I saw this on Instagram, actually. It made me laugh. So I don't have any magic formula. If I know I've got a long day's riding, especially if the weather's going to be either humid or raining, I'll chuck the contact lenses in, because there's nothing worse than being on the bike and it getting steamed up. But I ride with my lids. I always ride my lids slightly open. So even if it's raining, I always let a little bit of air in, and I find that's enough to kind of circulate it to keep the old spectacles. But the number of times I've had to pull over and you wipe the glasses clean and you put them back on, and 2 minutes later, it's like, nope, they're steamed up again. So yeah, it's highly frustrating.
I grew up wearing glasses and contacts. I all my life I had glasses and contacts, and then about 2005 I got my eyes lasered, and it's been amazing. So the entire time I've been riding bikes, I'd never needed glasses, but I've definitely, over the last year or two, definitely feel like my vision's deteriorating now, and I'm thinking, oh God, I'm gonna have to start wearing glasses or contacts again when I'm riding, and that pops into my head like with lenses. I remember when I used to wear lenses, sometimes you'd blink and the contact lens would pop out, or the wind would hit it and it would pop out, and I'm like, what if that happens when I'm on the bike? And then you're foobarred, aren't you?
Yeah, the challenge I have is, if I'm camping, though, it's trying to keep your hands clean enough to take the contact out, because obviously you're supposed to have as clean as you can hands, because you don't want to get any gunk in your eyes. But I actually had I got invited to Downing Street once for a CEREBRA event as one of the ambassadors. I probably walked past you, Bruce, and we didn't even know.
Well have done, yeah.
I had a couple of glasses of champagne and whatever, and went back to the hotel, and I fell asleep, and I forgot I had my contacts in. Because I don't know why I put them in, but just to look a bit more sort of fresh faced. And I woke up in the morning and it was like my eyes were glued together, and I had and it took me about 20 minutes to get them out. So I'm always very conscious now to don't drink if you've got your contacts in, because you'll forget that you've got them and you'll fall asleep with your with them in your eyes.
Have you ever lost one in the back of your eye before?
Nearly.
Oh. Honestly, I've had that where you can feel it still in there, and you're moving, pulling your eye and looking around. Eventually, you get the corner of it. Oh,
but yeah, no secret sauce on that. Just contact lenses or them steaming up and kind of having to pull over, which is a real pain in the neck.
You can get ones now, though, can't you? That you wear for a month solid. You put them in and you just keep them in there for the whole month.
Oh, really?
I'm sure. I think you can.
Wow.
I'm sure. I could be wrong, but I'm sure I've heard that.
That would be an amazing step forward, because I do find my glasses, I find them really frustrating, and the kids will knock them off, or all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to look at whether I could get mine re-lasered, because I know you can have them redone, touched up, but I don't know if maybe I'm too old. I can't be. 44 is not old, but I'm going to have a look at it. Can't bloody afford it, but never mind. Right. So next one, Motor MA77. Hope the boots are dry, TP1. What's been your biggest challenge as a dad and a biker?
So I think a bike is probably easier to answer first. I think my biggest challenge was crashing my bike in Sweden. So like I said, it was the first big trip I'd done by myself. I think it was pretty naive, to be honest. I didn't really have much kind of in place. I'd done a couple of rides around Europe with mates before and stuff, but never kind of completely solo. And I think it was on day 8 of that ride, I was up in northeast Sweden, just past a place called Örnsköldsvik, proper in the arse end of nowhere from Sweden's point of view. And I was coming around a bend, and it's my fault. I was too close behind a lorry, and all of a sudden there was just this bit of metal in the road, and I was doing 60 mile an hour, plowed over it. I had about 3 seconds where I thought, I've got away with that one. And then suddenly the front of the bike started shaking, and I was like, uh-oh. And to my right was this kind of gravel bank, which just went down into this like ravine. And I was like, okay, I've got to try and keep this bike on the road and not fall down there and not go into any oncoming traffic. And somehow I managed to come to the side of the road unscathed. The tire was obliterated. My front wheel looked like Thor had taken his hammer to it. It was just, annihilated. I was lucky I had breakdown cover, which I know is kind of like going on these big adventures having breakdown cover. But the AA actually had sponsored me that trip to give me free breakdown cover.
Wow!
But I think it took them 3 hours to come and get me. Obviously, it wasn't the AA; it was Sweden's version, because I was just in the middle of even this town. I was in the middle of nowhere. They shipped me back there. But I'd made the mistake, and this is where kind of planning for trips is so important, and because I was so naive. It was I think it was a Thursday, about 5 o'clock, I got back to this town, and they took me to a garage, and I said, have you got a tire? They said, no, we're going to have to order it from Stockholm. And they said, it'll be here on Wednesday. And I was like, but it's Thursday. And they said, it's Swedish Independence Day tomorrow. So no one's in on Friday. Saturday, Sunday's out. And then Monday was another bank holiday. They said they'll ship it on Tuesday.
Always the way.
And I was like, and I was in a right state. I was kind of just like, I booked into a hotel for the night, but I was just like, I was emotionally kind of unprepared for like, something going wrong. And I had no real experience of stuff like that to relate on. Before the days I knew about, Sam Manacom and making the best of a bad situation. So I had a really bad couple of days, and I ended up spending it just sort of, camped near this town. And I went to, do a few bits. There was a couple of, little festival things on, but it was pretty I was pretty fed up, to be honest. And I was nearly at the point where I was like, stuff it. I'm just going to, I can't be bothered to do this anymore. But I'm glad I stuck it out. Like, luckily my wife was on the phone telling me to get a grip of myself. But that was definitely the hardest thing, being stuck there in this little town with no contacts and no one to really kind of, interact with, really. It's not like it was a bike festival. There was other bikers that I knew. It was all pretty, it was pretty grim, to be honest. And thankfully they managed to get another tire on. But that's what basically blew my whole trip, because I only had a certain time to get to Nordkapp and back. And because I'd lost nearly 5 days, plus the kind of confidence, it was through the floor in terms of kind of riding again. So I had to get used to, okay, I don't want this to happen again. That was definitely the biggest biker challenge that I've had. But I learned so much from it. It's one of those things that I'm almost glad it happened, to have a crash and to not be injured, but to learn from it, because I think I know a lot better how to handle a situation if something kind of goes wrong, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah. I was just a way to say that's probably the first sort of absolutely major critical incident that you'd had in a biking sense, in a biking world sense. And I was the same on mine when it all went wrong in West Africa, and I made the decision to come home. To that point, that was the biggest sort of almost like life-changing events type of thing that I'd experienced. But it did me the world, where I thought I was at my absolute lowest. Looking back, that did me the world of good, because from then on, anything else that happens is just like, all right, okay, it's delayed me. It's maybe not where I want to be at the moment, but life moves on. And okay, I can't do that. So let's adapt. And what else do we need to do to make the overall aim attainable? It's that attainable, achievable thing, isn't it? And you learn from your experiences, don't you? So
I said, I'm glad it happened, because I don't think I'd be here now doing this stuff, because I think that motivated me to, right, let's do it properly. Let's get the right things in place. But also, when stuff does go wrong, you just sort of kind of like, you just deal with it. You're just like, okay, what's the problem? How do we solve it? If there's a 5-day delay, okay. And I probably, if it happened again, I'd probably do the delay, and I'd be like, right, book an extra couple of days off work, or try and, right, I need to do 600 miles a day, but I'm going to do it. Whereas I was in too much of a state. I think as a dad, now this is a really tricky one, because like, I've been in an unfortunate position that both of my kids have had, health things going on, especially when they were younger, but also in a fortunate position that I know there's plenty of parents out there whose little ones kind of haven't come through really hard times. But I think the most difficult thing for me, and this is why the whole Tiny Lives charity is such kind of a pivotal thing in terms of how they helped. So my daughter Isla was born 6 weeks earlier than expected. And everything was all all right, actually. When she was first born, the first kind of day or so was kind of non-eventful. My wife and her were on the ward together. Everything was going all right. And then all of a sudden, I think it was I wasn't allowed to stay in the hospital. And it was about 10 o'clock at night. My wife rang me and said, oh, you need to come up to the hospital. They're taking Isla to the special care baby unit. And I was like, all right, okay, what's wrong? And they said, okay, they think she's got a blockage in her bowel. And the doctors are really kind of worried about her because she's not eating and she wasn't, kind of passing stool and all this sort of thing that you expect from a little baby. So I kind of jumped on the bike as it was at the time because it was the quickest way to I don't know what speed I was doing going up the hospital, but it was definitely 3 figures, kind of pulled up there. And I still remember coming to, there's like a set of double doors that let you into the special care baby unit. And we'd done a tour of the hospital about 4 or 5 weeks before, just to let you know, like, where this is kind of, as a new parent, what you do to let you know where the labour suite is and where the shop is in case you need to get stuff. And I remember going past this door, and the lady who was giving us the tour said, oh, this is the special care baby unit. This is where all the really poorly babies go. But don't worry, your baby's not going to be poorly, And then they had like a mural on the wall for all the babies that have died. And I remember standing outside it, like pressing this button, trying to get in. And just being like, what the hell is going on? And then we had the next couple of days was just like horrendous. Like the doctors were, telling us like all these bad things that could happen. That night they'd said to my wife to say goodbye to Isla while they took her in. And it was all just like, and that was kind of like, just, you're in there, you're sitting. And it's funny when we talk about like, God in like the previous question, I remember thinking like, we got married in a church, and I remember thinking, I almost want to go and speak to the vicar because I don't even know what to do. I don't know how to deal with this situation. And it obviously brings kind of mortality right really close to you. And obviously we were lucky that the doctors managed to kind of sort Isla out, and, she was in there for a little while, but she kind of got better, and, she's kind of with us now. But that was definitely the hardest thing. But that's one of the things that I bring myself back to is when I'm, if I'm having a hard day on the bike, or, I'm preparing one of these challenges, it's like, that's the bit I take myself back to kind of motivate myself to, okay, I want to try and help a charity who helps parents who are in that situation. Because Tiny Lives gave us so much support from a kind of pastoral point of view, the different things they support on the ward, the kind of nurses and the other staff who kind of take you through that. And you build up this kind of community of yourselves and the other parents and the charity who kind of like, you kind of get through it as kind of one big group rather than individuals. So that's probably the biggest challenge I've had as a dad, is going through that experience.
Wow, God. Well, I can only imagine what that's like. Yeah.
But like I said,
as a parent, you don't even want to contemplate it, do you? You don't want to think about stuff like that.
But I feel like I'm in the lucky camp because, there's plenty of parents who don't get to take their kids home in that situation. So it's kind of like, and again, lucky that we live in the UK and I've got an amazing hospital which is on my doorstep, literally. So, can't complain too much.
Yeah. It's something you mentioned earlier about, how lucky we are here in the UK. And it took me back to when I've done trips out in Morocco, and where you see people. I remember seeing young lads there, 14, 15 years of age lads, and they literally, they sleep at the side of the road, It's just them. There's no family around about them. It's them. And they are sleeping in everything that they own. And during the day, they hustle. They're not thieves. They're not thieving, but they're hustling. So it's like, they'll spot the tourist near we were going to visit these waterfalls. So they're out on the main thoroughfare, and they're looking for tourists, and they're like, come with me, I'll show you where you can park, and then it's like, I'll take you here and I'll meet this person will tell you about the attraction. They're hustling all the time, and you give them a couple of quid and that is how they survive. That's all they have, is what they're wearing and what they sleep in it. And it does make you think. It absolutely makes you think, doesn't it? That Jesus, they are for the grace of whatever or whoever. I was born here in the UK, and I've got a house and I've got a family, and blimey, yeah. Anyway, right, next question. APJ Martin, how do you rationalise seeing babies in a neonatal intensive care so that it can drive you to help rather than just upset you? Well, I think you've covered that straight in what you just said.
Yeah, no, it's very upsetting, right? And it's a horrible situation to be in as a parent and to see other people in. But I think it's also, yeah, like I said, it's the motivation of knowing that you can do something to help in that situation, albeit it might be slightly removed and kind of quite, quite far away from those individuals who are there. And obviously, I've been back to the ward, I think twice since my little one was in there, and it is really difficult. But it's more of a motivation for me. It's kind of that whole, what is it that was it Martin Luther King said something about darkness cannot be driven up by darkness, only light can do that, or something like that. It's kind of like, okay, so there's a lot of people in a really bad situation, but what can you do to kind of make it more, make a positive out of it as much as you can? And I guess that's how I rationalize it. But I do think about it a lot, especially, when I'm doing stuff for the charity, about all the people who are, every single day there's another parent sitting in that same seat that I was sitting in, whether it's Christmas Day or it's your birthday, it doesn't kind of matter. So it's all about how can you support those people who continue to go through it.
Yeah, definitely. It's that personal connection, isn't it, with the charity that you're sort of fundraising for. For me, it was St. Christopher's Hospice was one of my charities, and that's sadly where my mum had chosen to pass away at. And it was seeing the work that they did, seeing how the nurses treated my mum with such compassion and really did help my mum massively, and how they were with us. And for me, it was like, as I said, I'm not a religious man, but I looked at them and I was like, you people are just angels. I consider myself a fairly resolute, fairly tough character. In my other job, used to deal with just horrific things, and you deal with it. But to see these people that are dealing with it day in, day out, and how they acted around, people that are passing away and all their families, I was just like, that is just beyond anything I could do, and that gives you the drive, doesn't it? Because you're like, I want to do something for you, to try and give something back to this place, to this charity.
Oh no, I think you're totally right, Bruce. And it's kind of like, you hear a lot, like, politicians and stuff, like, giving it all about the NHS, but there's so many amazing people who and I'm the same as you, man. I couldn't do it. I'm not strong enough to sit there and help either people who are kind of in their kind of last throes of life, or working on intensive care so it's kind of like these people have got more about them than I do, and I genuinely not only physically applaud that, but kind of like try and do something to support them in the way that I can. So you're totally right, man.
Absolutely. Right, next one. The Inspire Rider official. Apart from arriving at Nordkapp, which I know was an incredible moment for you, what are your top 5 best experiences you had and places visited on that ride?
Okay. So Inspired Rider, there's a guy called Stan who's been in touch with me. He's a great guy. He's planning a trip to Nordkapp, COVID depending, for his kind of charity ride, which is awesome. So it was an amazing trip, and the route that I took, I went down from Newcastle, did Dover, Calais, and then I went through France, Belgium, Netherlands, up through Germany, west coast of Sweden, and then the rest of it was Norway, just piling up there. And I mean, pretty much all of the best bits were Norway. I'm not going to lie, Norway is just like awesome. We talked a little bit about with Tromsø already. Meeting the bike club up there, getting taken into someone's family. They took me on this, I had a day off, and they took me on this midnight hiking trip. And obviously it was kind of like the midnight sun. So we climbed this mountain and saw the midnight sun, and it was just amazing. So that was awesome. Also, I bumped into another kind of biker gang in a place called Trondheim, which is kind of the northerly bit of kind of the heart of Norway. And they were just awesome. They took me on a tour of their city. They gave me the kind of local beer. And it was just like, couldn't have made me feel kind of more welcome. In terms of riding though, and I know you've done this road as well, the Trollstigen Pass. What a road that is. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's this, I think it's, I don't know how many hairpins, 11, 12 hairpin bends that kind of creep up this waterfall. And it's like, again, it's like something out of the Lord of the Rings. You wouldn't believe this is a real place. And it was just the most awesome road to ride. If anyone gets to Norway on the bike, or even if you're just there kind of traveling, definitely go and check out the Trollstigen. It's just amazing.
For me, I'd seen the pictures of the Trollstigen, of the zigzag road and of the waterfall and everything, and I got there, it was peeing down with rain, miserable. My visor was all steaming up and everything. I zigzagged my way up to the top, and you went through this freezing fog, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a shit tough day, this is going to be tough. And when I got to the top, I went through the fog, and it's glorious sunshine, but snow everywhere. And then there was like, you know where the viewing platform is? There's like a touristy place, isn't there? A big car park. I went by that, and then there were people skiing across the road. And it was like late May. So I'm looking at a picture that you have where the road has been cut. Like they've ploughed the road, and there's like 6 to 8, 10 feet snowdrifts either side. It was like that. But there were people sort of coming down the mountain, skiing through the snow, and then just zipping across the tarmac onto the snow again, you know, and it was just like, this is amazing. And I stopped and got some pictures of it, and it was, the rest of the day was in glorious sunshine. So I went through the clouds, and now I was above them. And yeah, I didn't know that was above the Trollstigen. I wasn't expecting that part, and it was the next part of the ride that was just phenomenal for me. Loved it.
No, it's awesome. I don't know how many I got to there. I think the other bits of that trip, there's two other bits that stand out. One is obviously kind of coming home. So I got the ferry from Amsterdam back into Newcastle, and my kind of family and stuff came and met me in Newcastle, which was like awesome. Like my little brother was there and stuff, and they had like a local TV film crew who saw me off. You know, it made me feel kind of like special for this thing I'd done. But the night before, actually, I stopped at a campsite in the Netherlands. It was a really beautiful day, and it was kind of like, you know, last full day of the trip before I got the ferry. And it was kind of like, I just had this, like, I got myself a beer, I was cooking something on my kind of camping stove, and I was just like, this is it, like, I've done it. Awesome. Like, I was so, like, it was that moment of kind of like, I've achieved the dream that I've had for so long. And I just remember sitting there in the sun with my, like, I had a little Suzuki cap on, just like drinking my beer, just thinking, yeah, this is it. And you don't, when you're in a big trip, or you know, these things where you've got some, you know, goal to achieve, there's so much going on in your head, and you've always got places to go, and you've got your goal, and then you've got to get yourself home, and there's different things go on. There's not, for me, there's not many of those moments where you're almost kind of like, it almost felt like Zen. Like, it was just like, this is so cool, you know, just sort of appreciating kind of what's going on, knowing that probably I'd not do another trip like that again, or in the same way. And the fact I was going back to my normal life after being out for like four odd weeks. So yeah, that was good.
I remember my sort of the last day of my trip riding home. my wife and I had been over at the TT, so we'd seen the TT, and then when we got the ferry over to Liverpool, we said goodbye, and, you know, she drove back home. I spent the night in some motel somewhere, and then had to ride down to Silverstone to meet up a load of people that were following. Excuse me. And then we did the ride from Silverstone back to the Cenotaph in London. And I remember being on that ride, and just, especially once we got sort of, I think it was the A41 north of Watford. And that was a road that I was really familiar with, because I'd been living in Watford for a little while as well. And it was all roads I remember riding before the trip. And all of a sudden I'm back on them, heading back. And then as we got into London, and I started doing my old commute, and then, you know, going down the Mall and looking at all the places round about, and we went round the back of Downing Street, and I could see all the guys that I work with standing on post, and it was just like, Jesus, this is finishing. This is it. I'm finished. And then I was almost like, oh no, it's finished. What now? You know, and then for like the next 18 months after that, I was like, what do I do now? I don't know what happens next, you know. Which again was, whereas, you know, you've probably done it, I don't want to say you've done it right, but because you're splitting your challenges down into individual challenges, you can focus on the next one, and then focus on the next one. And, you know, you're not going to get that sort of post-trip blues type of thing.
Yeah. And this, you know, my idea about doing all of the Arctic circles only came around. So I did the Norway one, did Nordkapp. And then I did my iron butt ride, which was kind of like, that was the, okay, I'll do this iron butt thing. And then once I'd done that, I was like, I need something, which is where I don't even know where this idea came from to do all of them, but I thought I need something which is more than just thinking about the next little ride, as it were. It's got to be a bigger thing to give me that kind of ongoing piece. So yeah, no, hopefully it's the right balance. But don't get us wrong. I think if I didn't have the other kind of limitations, would I be out and do a kind of, try and do all at once? Probably.
Yeah. Oh man, I think it's brilliant. I didn't realize you were that's the ultimate goal, is to do all of the Arctic circles. It's brilliant. That's a great idea. The Greenland one is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, because there's just no roads up there. I mean, yeah, they've got settlements with roads in it, but I don't think there's that many vehicles. So it is going to be it sounds like it's going to be a snowmobile thing.
Awesome.
But the money involved in getting over there is going to be, I'm going to be saving up for a while,
Yeah, definitely. But then, if by that point you've done all these other ones, you've got a proven track record. So I would imagine getting some sort of corporate help would be more attainable. Certainly. I mean, now you've already proved yourself. Mm-hmm. But for something like that, that's massive. Wow. The Inspire rider, was that Stan, did you say? Is that his name?
Stan, yeah.
Yeah, he does say massive best wishes for your upcoming 4 points of the Scottish Compass Challenge. So come on, what's this?
Oh, yeah, so this is my interim, because I've just got this thirst to have to do something, and because I can't get anywhere else because of COVID. I've sort of set up my own little challenge that I'm going to try and ride between the 4 compass points of Scotland in 24 hours. So starting out at the Mull of Galloway, and then I'll head over to Peterhead, and then go up to Dunnet Head. And then the last one I can never pronounce, but it's a lighthouse, which is on the most westerly. That's the one.
Ardnamurchan Point.
So it's about 800 miles, but only about, I think, 50 miles of it's motorway, another 100's dual carriageway, and the rest is all the Scottish A roads in the Highlands. So Google reckons if I add in my 15-minute fuel stops, it reckons it's 23 and a half hours. So
wow.
it's going to be tight. So I'm going to have to use the motorways and the dual carriageways to get ahead. But I had to do something else, like not only for, I mean, I wanted to continue to do stuff for the charity, but just for my own sanity. Like I think a lot of people, lockdown has been pretty rubbish, and not really having much to kind of focus on. So this just gave me especially like a kind of bike and motivation. I thought I'll try and do something in the interim until borders reopen and stuff. So this kind of Scottish 4 corners, and because I've done like I did the whole iron butt thing, which was great, and I got certified and stuff by iron butt. But I thought, let's do something. I'll try and do something a bit unique again that maybe not many people have done. And so far, no one's popped up on any of the forums to say they've done it. So if there is anyone out there who's done this, I could do with some advice. So please reach out.
I've never heard of anyone doing the Scottish 4 corners. The UK one definitely, but never the Scottish one. Peterhead's right near my old hometown. That's my old stomping ground, Peterhead. The Blue Toon. Yeah, there's not much to do there, mate. You'll be click going.
Yep.
Ardnamurchan Point takes forever. Once you come off like the main sort of road, it then becomes single track. And I did it with my son on the back, and I just remember it taking, it's like going to Nordkapp, that last bit. Just thinking, where is this place? But it's a beautiful, beautiful place once you get there. Yeah. So when are you doing that then? When's that happening?
So I think it's the 16th of July. So I'm doing it. I'm starting at midday on the Friday. I'm going to finish at midday on the Saturday, because when I did I learned from my iron butt, and this is all about learning. I rode down from Newcastle to Land's End, which is a big old ride. It's like, must be 400 or 500 miles the day before my iron butt. Then I got up at 4 a.m. and rode all the way to John O'Groats and finished at midnight. And then the next day I was ill. Like, I don't know if I'd picked up a bug or something, or if I was just so tired, but I was like wiped out. So I'm trying to think, right, if I get a good night's kip the night before, I'll stay in Stranraer or something, be ready, to start at midday. And then I've got midday the next day. And then just, I'll camp somewhere near Fort William or something, get another good night's kip, and then ride home. So trying to do it a sensible way.
Mega. And people can follow that on your socials, I take it.
Yeah, so if you just search for the Arctic Rider on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, you'll find me. I'll be posting all of the stuff up there, both on the lead up, and I'm going to try and do as much as I can during that 24 hours. Although it's going to be very quick. Like, hey, I've stopped for some fuel. I've got to go.
Well, you get 15 seconds on your videos on Instagram stories, so that'll do.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I'll put links, as I said before, folks, down in the descriptions there. So that's all the Instagram questions. Last ones. Are you okay for time?
Yeah, I'm still good.
Okay, cool. It's just a couple over on Facebook. So that's facebook.com/TeapotOne. First one, John Tinkler. Gordon, has Bruce mentioned he's been round the world on a jigsaw? Cheers, John. Here's a question. What was Arctic Rider's scariest moment on his trips?
So
running out of baby wipes.
Yeah. So I've spoken about my crash, but actually I had an incident in Norway on my 2014 trip, which upon reflection was fine. But at the time I was absolutely shitting my pants. So I'd linked up with another motorbike group in a place called Trondlag, which is like north of Tromsø. And they'd very kindly, they put me up in one of these little, they've got these little wooden hut things that are at campsites just so you can get a dry night. And the next day, this guy said, there's someone up the next kind of stop up where you go and 400 miles up the road who's offered you a bed for the night. And I thought, great. Well, I'll take that. Better than camping. So I met this kind of middle-aged woman at this little, this is in the arse end of Norway, this little kind of shop in the middle of nowhere, way off the main road. And she said, if you ride, we'll ride back to the house together and we'll make some kind of bolognese and stuff. I thought, that's very nice. So go up to her house. She lets me put her bike in the barn. We'll lock up the barn. We get into this little house and it's like a little 2-bedroom, sort of those typical kind of red and white Norwegian houses. And there's this German guy there who's like her, I don't know what he is. He lives there and he helps her with jobs and stuff. Anyway, I wasn't judging
to a
what was
seat
happening.
in the corner.
So we start, she makes some bolognese and we had a couple of beers and it was just started chatting. And then all of a sudden it sort of took a weird turn and this German guy started getting a bit aggressive and he was pretty racist and it was all feeling a bit really uncomfortable. And he started telling me how much he loved my kit and he was so jealous of my bike and I must have so much money and all this sort of thing. So I stopped drinking the beer because I thought this is a bit weird. And then he went away and he came back in with this axe and he was just holding this axe, this full on. And I was like, "You all right?" And he's like, "I like chopping wood." And I was like, "All right." And then he said, "I've been building a hut out the back. Do you want to come and see it? It's just a walk up into the forest."
Yeah.
Do a fuck want to be going anywhere near it? And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come with you." And I was
just put my helmet and all my kit on. Yeah.
So, and a detail I'd left out is I had no mobile phone signal. So, and I don't think I can't even remember if I told my wife, because I thought, I'll text her when I get to I'm not even sure if she knew I was there at this point. I was just uncontactable, didn't know this woman's name, didn't know the place. Anyway, so I'm walking up the back of this thing and he'd been building this hut and I was like, my bike's locked in a barn. I was like, I'm not a fighter. I'm like a little slim guy from Newcastle and there's this big, and he was a big German guy. And then he was just he was chopping wood and he was showing me this hut he was building. And he was just carrying on saying really sort of racist things. And it never went anywhere. But for those 25, 30 minutes, I was like this. I thought it was, when you just get the sense of someone, he was in a bad mood and he was smashing this wood up. And then thankfully he just went back in the house and sort of stumbled into his pit and was away. But the whole night I was lying there covered in his bed, he's going to come and get me with that axe. And in the morning we woke up and he was I think he'd forgotten, because he was so pissed. But that was the scariest. I was really bricking it because I thought I've got no way of just escaping, and no one knows that I'm here. It was the only negative of Norway was the crazy German guy.
So every sort of horror film you've ever watched, when you go, why did they go down that hill? Why did they go down that road or go in that place alone? And there you are doing it.
It was so eerie though, because it was so far north across the Arctic Circle. I was about 60, 70 miles south of Bude, which is the place where you get the ferry to Lofoten. So it was midnight sun as well. So I was kind of it was midnight. I had this guy with an axe and it was this is like a horror film. Why is it so bright? Why can I see the shine of the axe where he's been sharpening it, ready to take my head off,
Did you ever do the Arctic Circle Raceway? Did you get a chance to go there?
it wasn't. I can't remember. So I met a guy in Muarana and I asked him, and he said something that was really difficult, and he didn't know the guy who owned it or anything. And because I was on a really tight time frame, I hadn't arranged it in good enough time, because I know you'd been, and I was like, I thought, oh, it'd be wicked to get a go. But it was just I think didn't know the right people, and I didn't have enough time to try and work out the right people, you know.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, that's mega. That's. I definitely want to go back there. That was loads of fun. Loads of fun. Right, the last one, Brian Seaman. Bit of an open question, but where is his or your mind when you're on a long adventure? Is it the finish line, the cause you're supporting, or are you just lost in the journey? Good one, Brian. Yeah,
I think especially on a big trip, it's a mix of all three. I mean, anyone who's done any sort of riding, whether it's just, whether you're popping out just, around the shops, or if you're going to the lakes, or you're going to Scotland, or going around the world, you have so much time in your helmet. I think certainly I do. I think about every single topic there is. I think about the reason I'm doing the ride. I'm thinking about the big destination. I'm thinking about the destination that day. But sometimes you are just lost in it's one of the things I love about the trip is kind of like you get up, you pack your tent, you're on the bike, you get some fuel, you look at the map, you get to the next place, you have some lunch, you get some fuel. Like, I love that, almost like the routine of kind of like not knowing the road ahead. All that sort of stuff. So it really depends on the situation. It's a mix of all of it. But I do, especially when I'm on one of the trips, I am thinking a lot about the reason, kind of why I'm doing it. Especially because, like, I think as much as I'd like riding in these places, like by choice, like when I did I did a trip around Europe with my mates, like we went to like France and Switzerland and Luxembourg and stuff. Like if I was going on like a bike holiday, I'd go somewhere hot, and I'd go somewhere with like good roads. So part of it always, like, it tends to be when I'm doing these rides, the weather tends to be rubbish, or I'm on a big time frame. So a lot of it is thinking about, okay, why am I doing this? Because this isn't fun. Like I talked about that day in Iceland, which was the worst day's riding ever. But what got me through was like, well, you can't give up. It's not an option, because you've got a bunch of people who've given you loads of money. You're doing it for this charity, and everything's associated with that. So that is in your mind when you're sort of shivering, riding along this Atlantic road, getting blown from side to side. That's, I think it's in the hardest moments that you think about the cause. Whereas when it's kind of easier riding, or it's part of the routine, then it's just the regular sort of stuff that goes through your head. I don't know. What about you, Bruce?
No, I totally agree. But I found like, well, I've only done the one big trip, obviously. I've done lots of shorter trips for various things. But I found it's round about that 4 to 6 week mark on the big trip that the whole trip just changed, and my whole mindset, my approach to everything just changed. And you're like, it went from, I'm on a trip, I'm doing something, and then all of a sudden it just became, well, this is life. This is just normal. This is life now. And I loved it when I fell into that, and it was just, you just experience it. It's just, okay, whatever happens, whatever's around this next bend, whatever. All right, have I run out of fuel? Oh, okay. You're like, I'm on my last bar of fuel. I've got no idea where the next fuel is. What option have you got? You got one option. Keep going. There's nothing behind you. So you just got to hope there's a petrol station somewhere up here. And if there's not, well, you run out and you stand by your bike and wait till somebody comes by and hope that they stop. And invariably they will. And for me, it was just that point where the trip then becomes like daily life. It just becomes the norm. On smaller trips, like you said, I'm always... Everything's always going through your mind anyway, isn't it? But in the bad times, you focus on why you're doing it. And on the good times, you live the moment. You enjoy it, don't you?
But I think there was a bit about, again, like I know, my trips are obviously much smaller. And I think I resonate, when you had the Biking for Bananas guys on, when I was listening, I resonate with stuff, but it's obviously not short order. But there is some of that kind of like when you get into that rhythm. For me, it's when I'm doing 3-4 weeks, it's only a week in. I'm kind of like, I'm starting to get that, okay, I'm really away from home now. Like, it's kind of like, that's a distant memory. I've got a couple of weeks to do this thing before I get back. But you do sort of like, I feel like I come back like a little bit of a changed person. Like I get this renewed sort of spirit and kind of like, well, life's more than just doing the school run and sitting on Zoom calls at work and whatever it might be. And I think one of the things I love as well about going to more far-flung places, especially northern Norway and Iceland, was like, I'm not like contactable. And as much as that's a dangerous thing if you have an incident, like I remember someone at work before I went
like a maniac German with an axe.
Like, exactly. But like, I remember someone at work saying when I was going to Iceland, we'll still be able to get a hold of you. And I was like, nope, try. You can ring my phone, but it's not, there's no signal where I'm going. And I think that's part of like that's one of the best feelings as well, knowing that you're kind of like a little bit freer of this kind of really crazy, busy world that we've got, albeit I'll be shipping back there fairly soon, but it's nice to just get away and have that, even if it's a couple of days away from kind of, normality. And Iceland, I don't know if bit of Iceland's on your list of places to go, Bruce. It is very cold. But apart from Reykjavik, I mean, there's not really a lot else going on in Iceland. No. You kind of, I followed the kind of the ring road and went on different places kind of off it. But it's just like, you get to like the towns and they're like, it's like a village with a shop and a petrol station, there's nothing. And that's part of like I love that. I love just being away from the kind of hustle and bustle, even of like a modern city like Reykjavik. And actually, it's like when you bump into those other travelers as well. Like I stopped to do some videoing, and this Dutch couple who were driving like this big 4x4 motorhome, they pulled over. It was on this like little dirt track, and they were like checking I was all right, because you don't see many travelers. And when someone stopped at the side of the road, but it was just that nice camaraderie between. It was like a normal conversation in an abnormal place. But then you do sometimes appreciate that kind of, especially traveling solo. Like I'm so much more out there and confident. Like when I used to go away with my mates and stuff, we wouldn't really used to speak to many other people because we were there as a group. But when you're on your own, you just have to kind of embrace it and be like, well, there's some people speaking to me, and if they're nice, that's good. If they're an axe murderer, well, I've got a good story to tell. So.
if I survive it,
exactly.
I've done. I'm saying I've done Iceland. I've been to Iceland with my wife. We went and we did a sort of like long weekend Northern Lights package thing. So Reykjavik, and we did the Golden Triangle thing. But I've never explored it, and it's definitely somewhere I want to go. How did you go then? Did you get the ferry to the Faroe, and then from Faroe across to Iceland?
Yeah, that's right. So I rode round to the top of Denmark, and then you get the ferry, which runs, I think it's like twice a week, and stops off in the Faroe Islands, and it lands you right in the east of Iceland in a place called Seersfjord, which is as far away from Reykjavik as you can be. So you're immediately into there's this one town there, and then once you've got past there, you're immediately into the wilderness. And it's just like, it looks like a different planet. Like it's the mountains and the kind of black sand dunes that you get. It's just like,
it's beautiful, isn't it?
It's so wild horses. I was like, what? But it's probably one of the few places now, certainly in Europe, which is you've still got that real nature's kind of out there. But it's beautiful. Apart from the weather was terrible when I went, but that's just comes with the course of riding north. But fantastic, and there's a good number of other bikers though there on the, like when I was getting on the ferry, it takes 2 days to get there on the ferry, but it was a real kind of good spirit, mostly kind of Germans and Russians there. Although I still like a sore thumb because there was GS, KTM Adventure, GS, and then me with this big yellow Suzuki V-Strom, GS, so.
As you were talking about it, I was thinking to myself, I've got to go. And then I just thought, I can't do it on a GS because everyone will be on GSs. And then I'm thinking, take a Gixxer, take a S1000RR. What would I do? What would I do it on? How can I get a bike, and what bike will I take?
Yeah.
Awesome. Dude, that's all the questions done.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, 2 hours.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks everyone for the questions as well. Pleasantly surprised at all the kind of lovely things and all the different topics. So it was great to kind of just come and have a bit of a random chat. So thank you.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to chat with you as always. And thank you very much, folks, for your questions. You do make the podcast. Sounds corny, but you do. Your questions, I love the variety that you get in these questions. Awesome. Mate, before we end, are there any plugs you want to give? Any shout outs? Feel free. Floor's yours.
Thanks very much. No, I mean, there's some amazing people. I know we've had like kind of John and Stan have asked questions. I've got a very kind of core group of long-standing followers. So massive shout out to anyone who's been following me from my kind of early days. And just if there's anyone who's got any questions or wants to get in touch, just like I'm on, those social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Always love to connect with new people and hear about some of the, especially different charity challenges that people are doing. Because like I said earlier, there's a really nice community building up over the last couple of years. And I think it's great, as many people who can do stuff and get out there, then I totally encourage you to. But yeah, just again, a pleasure to be on. So thank you, Bruce, for the opportunity.
My pleasure, mate. Anything I can do to help spread the word. Have you got YouTube or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube as well. So awesome. I've got there's videos of my apart from my 2011 trip, which I didn't film, everything else is on there. Some are in shorter episodes. My Nordkapp one is a 45-minute film, which was professionally produced. So that gets a bit more views than some of the others. And I've reviewed a few different bikes on stuff as well there, which people like to take note of. So again, always happy to connect on there as well, and for people to see some of the stuff I've been talking about in the actual flesh.
Mega. As before, folks, I'll put all the links down below in the show notes or the vid description. Gordon, awesome, man. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for doing what you do, and wishing you all the best for the future endeavours. Can't wait to follow along. And hopefully, we'll meet up in person again, I'm sure, next time I'm heading north.
Fish and chips are on me next time.
Right, you're on. Folks, hope you've enjoyed this one. Keep on doing your thing. Look after those that you love. But get on out there and live your life. Woo-ha! See you in the next one. Cheers, dude.
Thanks, man.